Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into something that we all share, childhood.
Yeah.
But this isn't just a trip down memory lane.
Right.
We're going to really look at the science and sociology of this critical period for development, and we're going to be using a blog post called The Enchanting World of Childhood.
Okay.
So get ready to find out why those early years are so important, how play shapes us, and also what challenges kids are facing today.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so what's really fascinating is that childhood is not just about being carefree.
right.
It's really the foundation for everything else in life.
Wow.
These early experiences, which seem so small at the time, actually end up shaping our brains for everything.
Like what?
Like cognitive abilities,
Yeah.
social skills,
Mm-hmm.
even emotional intelligence as adults.
So those hours and hours that I spent building Lego masterpieces as a kid,
Right.
it wasn't just me trying to avoid being bored.
Yeah,
It was actually me laying the foundation for problem-solving skills.
Exactly.
But maybe with a little less frustration about those missing pieces.
Yeah, but it goes even beyond specific skills.
Right.
It's about building that capacity to learn to adapt to new situations and connect with others on an emotional level.
Right.
And all of this starts in those early years.
So this is way bigger than just parents then.
Absolutely.
I mean, educators, policymakers, the whole community, they
Yeah.
all have a part in this.
Absolutely. And that brings us to something that the source really emphasizes.
Okay.
It's the power of play.
Yeah.
Play is not just letting kids run around and burn off energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's how they learn, how they grow, and how they develop in incredible ways.
So it's more than just running around a playground then.
Yes.
Give us the details.
Yeah.
What makes play so powerful?
For one thing, there was a study by the University of Copenhagen that showed that children who engage in regular outdoor play have a 30% lower risk of developing obesity.
Wow.
And it's not just about their physical health,
Yeah.
like drawing and building, for example. These things boost creativity and offer different ways that kids can express themselves.
Yeah, it's like a full workout for their brains.
Exactly.
But what about social development?
Yes,
I know that I learned so much just from playing games with my friends growing up.
that's right, because games teach kids these essential social skills.
Right.
Cooperation,
Yeah.
negotiation,
Uh-huh.
and even conflict resolution.
Right.
And these are things that we all need as adults.
Yeah, we do.
But the question is, are we really giving kids enough opportunities for that type of play these days?
That is a really good question.
Right.
And speaking of these days, let's talk about some of the challenges that are facing children today. I mean, we can't just ignore those, right?
You're absolutely right. And it's not about falling into that trap of kids these days.
Right.
It's recognizing that the landscape of childhood has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And these changes are having an impact on children in real and measurable ways.
Yeah, and the source mentions a couple of the big ones, like technology overload.
Right.
I mean, we all remember feeling overwhelmed sometimes as kids,
Yeah.
but it feels like the pressure that kids are dealing with today is on a whole other level.
Exactly, because research is showing that excessive screen time disrupts sleep patterns.
Yeah.
And it can hinder the development of social skills,
Yeah.
ultimately impacting all of those foundational things that we were talking about earlier.
Right. It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
And then you've got the academic pressure.
Yeah.
It just seems like childhood is becoming more and more focused on achievement. I mean, is there even time for free play anymore?
That's such a crucial question,
It is.
because when the focus shifts so heavily toward academics,
Yeah.
we risk overlooking the importance of holistic development. Creativity, emotional intelligence, resilience.
Yeah.
Those are all things that are nurtured through play and exploration, not just textbooks.
And then, of course, there's the nature deficit.
Yes.
It sounds kind of sentimental, but it's more than just kids being stuck inside.
Yeah.
What are the real implications there?
Well, research from the University of Washington shows that limited exposure to nature is linked to the rising rates of anxiety and attention issues in kids.
Wow.
So it goes way beyond just fresh air and sunshine.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we tackle these huge challenges? I think it feels overwhelming to think about trying to change things at a societal level.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel pretty overwhelming.
It does.
But the source makes a good point.
Okay.
It doesn't all fall on parents.
Right.
I mean, educators, communities,
Right.
policymakers,
Right.
we all play a role in creating an environment that supports kids so they can really thrive.
Precisely. And there are a lot of practical things that we can do.
Okay.
First of all, we need to encourage all types of play.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need fancy toys or organized activities.
Right.
Even something as simple as building a fort out of blankets
Yeah.
or having a spontaneous dance party in the living room.
These things can spark imagination and creativity.
So it's about making space for that unstructured play,
Yes,
not just adding another scheduled activity to their week.
exactly.
I like that. What else?
Validating a child's emotions is also super important.
Okay.
It sounds simple,
Yeah.
but a lot of times we just dismiss how kids are feeling.
Right.
We tell them not to be sad or that they're too old to cry.
Right.
And these messages can have a real lasting impact.
It really makes you think about your own childhood
It does.
and how your feelings were handled. Were
But
you
I'll-
really heard?
Yeah,
It's powerful stuff.
it is.
But how do you validate emotions without just letting kids run wild?
Well, it's about guiding them to identify and express how they're feeling in a healthy way.
Okay.
We can teach them coping mechanisms
Yeah.
and help them understand that all emotions are valid,
Okay.
even the uncomfortable ones.
Like we're giving them tools to navigate the world.
Exactly.
Speaking of tools, what about screen time?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one for a lot of parents.
It is.
What does the source say about that?
Well, instead of just focusing on limiting screen time,
Right.
the source encourages us to think about what we're replacing it with.
Okay.
So are we offering alternatives?
Like what?
Like reading together, going for a walk, playing a board game.
Right. So it's about being intentional,
Exactly.
creating a balance.
Yes,
And it all comes back to encouraging play and just spending quality time with each other.
it does.
But what about education? I
Right.
mean, shouldn't we be thinking about that too?
Absolutely. And the source stresses the importance of investing in holistic education.
Okay.
It's about looking beyond standardized tests
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing the importance of things like arts and sports,
Right.
music,
Yeah.
and social emotional learning,
Okay.
because these things are all essential for well-rounded development.
Right. It's about nurturing the whole child. It's
Exactly.
not just focusing on academics. This
Ah.
is all so important.
It is.
But I keep thinking back to the memories that we talked about earlier. What is it about childhood memories
Right.
that makes them so powerful and long-lasting?
Well, childhood is full of firsts,
Like,
first steps,
Uh-huh.
first words, first friendships.
right.
And these experiences really shape who we are and how we understand the world.
Yeah.
Our brains are basically wired to pay close attention during these moments.
Like our internal recording system is on high alert,
Exactly.
capturing those key moments.
Yeah.
Are there certain types of memories that have a bigger impact?
Well, the source mentions that celebrating milestones can have a lasting impression.
Okay.
And that means big and small milestones.
Like,
Think about birthdays, graduations, even just learning how to ride a bike.
yeah.
These events,
Right.
which are usually marked by rituals and traditions,
Uh-huh.
they send a powerful message to kids.
What's that?
You're special, you're capable, you're loved.
So it's about way more than just cake and presents.
It is.
It's about self-esteem and belonging.
Exactly.
What other kinds of memories stand out?
Family traditions are another big one.
Okay.
Holiday gatherings, weekend rituals, even silly little things you did as a family.
Yeah.
These things create a sense of comfort and continuity and connection.
Right.
Things that a lot of adults crave later in life.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They provide stability and identity.
They do.
It's really fascinating how these small things can have such a big impact.
It is.
What else does the source highlight?
Encouraging curiosity is crucial.
Oh.
Remember all those why questions we asked as kids?
Mm-hmm.
Those were gold.
Yeah.
Curiosity is the foundation of lifelong learning.
Right.
And we have to nurture that.
Yeah.
We can't stifle it.
Right.
When we allow kids to explore and ask questions and just wonder about the world around them,
Yeah.
we're setting them up for a lifetime of discovery and growth.
Like we're giving them a key to unlock their full potential.
Exactly.
But as we're talking about all of this,
Yeah,
it's important to remember that childhood isn't a one-size-fits-all experience.
you're right.
The source talked about how there are cultural variations that
Yeah.
can lead to vastly different childhoods around the world.
Absolutely, because what might seem normal in one culture
Yeah,
could be completely different in another.
right.
For example, some cultures really emphasize structure and routine,
Yeah,
while others prioritize freedom and exploration.
right.
These different approaches reflect the values and beliefs that people have about what's best for kids.
It's a good reminder that there's no single right way to have a childhood.
Exactly.
Each culture has its own unique approach.
Right.
And it's fascinating to learn about those differences.
Absolutely. And by understanding and appreciating these variations,
Yeah,
we broaden our own perspectives.
Right.
It makes us think critically about our own assumptions and consider different ways of raising kids.
Right, and this actually brings us back to those early experiences
Yeah,
and how they continue to influence us throughout life.
it does.
It's like we've come full circle back to that lasting impact of those foundational years.
Exactly.
But how exactly do those experiences continue to influence us as adults?
Well, one way
Yeah.
is through our attachment styles.
Okay.
You know those early relationships we have with our caregivers,
Uh-huh.
particularly as babies and toddlers?
Yeah.
Those relationships really shape how we relate to others throughout life.
So we're talking about how we bond, how we trust, how we communicate in relationships.
Exactly.
That's a big deal.
It is, because if we have those secure attachments as kids,
Yeah.
we're more likely to feel secure and trusting in our adult relationships.
Right.
We can connect with people on a deeper level
Mhm.
and handle conflict better.
But what if those early attachments weren't secure?
Right.
How does that affect things?
Well, that's where things can get a little more tricky.
Okay.
Those insecure attachment styles,
Yeah.
which often come from inconsistent or unresponsive caregiving,
Right.
can lead to some issues in adult relationships.
Like what?
Things like having a hard time trusting others, a fear of intimacy, maybe pushing people away,
Right.
things like that.
So it can really impact our relationships.
It can, but remember, these patterns aren't set in stone.
Okay.
With awareness and effort, we can heal from those early wounds and develop healthier relationships.
So even though those childhood experiences have a big impact,
Yeah,
we still have the power to change our own paths.
exactly.
That's good to know.
It is.
But attachment styles are only one part of the puzzle.
Right.
What other ways do childhood experiences influence us?
Well, another way is through those core beliefs and values we develop.
Okay.
The things that we hear from caregivers and educators and just from the culture around us.
Mm-hmm.
Those things become part of who we are, and they influence our worldview.
So, for example, if you were always praised for your achievements as a kid,
Right.
you might grow up believing in your own abilities and having that drive to succeed.
Exactly.
Mm.
But if you are constantly criticized
Right.
or told you weren't good enough,
Yeah.
you might struggle with self-doubt and fear of failure.
It's amazing how those early messages can stick with us,
They do?
even if we don't even realize it.
It's true.
How do we become more aware of these beliefs
Right.
and even challenge them if they're holding us back?
Self-reflection is key.
Okay.
When you pay attention to your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
your emotional reactions,
Yeah.
your behavior patterns,
Right.
you can start to see those underlying beliefs that might be limiting you.
It's like we're archaeologists of our own minds.
Exactly.
So once we've identified these limiting beliefs, what can we do about them?
Well, you can challenge whether they're even true.
Yeah.
And then try to replace them with more empowering beliefs.
Right.
It takes effort,
Mm-hmm.
but you can rewrite those old scripts.
It's a journey
It
of
is.
self-discovery and growth.
It is.
And speaking of growth, I'm curious about emotional regulation.
Okay.
That's something I'm still working on.
Yeah.
How do our childhood experiences influence how we develop those emotional regulation skills?
Well, it's a complex skill
Yeah.
that develops over time,
Right.
and it's heavily influenced by our early experiences.
Okay.
So, for example, if you grew up in a really chaotic or emotionally volatile environment,
Yeah.
you might find it harder to regulate your own emotions as an adult.
You might be more prone to anger.
Right.
Or easily overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Or have trouble calming yourself down when you're upset.
Exactly. That's a common pattern.
Okay.
But if you had caregivers who modeled healthy emotional expression
Right.
and they helped you learn to cope with your feelings,
Yeah.
then you're more likely to have good emotional regulation skills as an adult.
So it's like having a toolbox of coping mechanisms.
Exactly.
And the self-awareness to know when to use them.
That's right.
Can these skills be learned later in life?
Huh.
Or are we just stuck with what we developed as kids?
It's never too late to learn and develop those skills.
That's good.
Yeah.
So how do we do that?
Well, therapy is a good option.
Okay.
Mindfulness practices. Even just learning about emotional regulation techniques can make a difference.
That's really encouraging.
It is.
So even though our childhood experiences have a big impact,
Yeah.
we're not destined to just repeat those patterns.
Right.
We have the power to create change.
So that's the point.
That's great.
Yeah.
But this brings up an interesting question.
Okay.
If these early experiences are so important,
Right.
what does that mean for how we approach parenting and education?
Right.
That's a big question
It is a big question.
and probably deserves a deep dive all on its own.
Probably.
But it really shows how important it is
Yeah.
to create nurturing supportive and enriching environments for kids.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about being mindful of the messages that we send,
Right.
the experiences that we provide,
Hmm.
and the emotional climate that we create.
And that's not just on parents. I
Yeah.
mean, educators, policymakers, even
Yeah.
just everyday people. We
Exactly.
all have a role to play in shaping the next generation.
It's a collective responsibility.
We're all part of this big web,
We are.
and our actions have ripple effects
They do.
that go way beyond our immediate circles.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
It is.
And it leads us perfectly into the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've talked about the science, the challenges, the impact of those early experiences.
Yeah.
But now I want to talk about something a little more personal.
Okay. Sounds good.
I want to hear about your childhood.
Okay.
What are some of your strongest memories?
Right.
What experiences shaped you into who you are today?
Okay.
Let's tap into that personal side of childhood and share some stories.
I love that idea.
Okay.
Well, there's one memory that always comes to mind when I think about what shaped me.
Okay.
When I was about 8 years old, my family took a trip to the Natural History Museum,
Wow.
and I remember being just awestruck by the dinosaur exhibit.
I can imagine those skeletons are pretty impressive,
They are.
especially for an 8-year-old.
They are.
What was it about the dinosaurs that really captivated you?
It was more than just their size.
Yeah.
That was definitely a factor.
Right.
But just standing there looking at those fossils,
Yeah.
I felt this overwhelming sense of wonder and curiosity
Wow.
about how vast time is
Uh-huh.
and all the incredible life that existed before humans even came along.
So it sparked that thirst for knowledge and exploration.
You did.
Something you've clearly carried with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That experience really planted a seed that grew into a lifelong fascination with science and history.
So it had a big impact.
Yeah, I remember just devouring books about dinosaurs, paleontology, evolution.
Wow.
My parents even got me a fossil hunting kit,
Oh, wow.
and I spent hours searching for fossils in our backyard.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
A trip to a museum ignited a passion
it did.
that still shapes your work today.
It's true, and it reminds us how seemingly ordinary experiences
Yeah.
can have such a big impact on kids.
Right.
And it shows how important it is to nurture that curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and give kids opportunities to explore.
Yeah, we've talked about so much today.
Well, we have.
The power of play, holistic education, the
Yeah.
challenges that kids are facing.
Mhm.
But as we wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that childhood isn't just a phase we go through.
Right.
Those early experiences really lay the foundation for who we become.
Right.
They influence everything,
Like-
our cognitive abilities,
Uh-huh.
our social skills,
Yeah.
our emotional well-being,
Right.
even our outlook on life.
It's a reminder that those early years are really powerful
They are.
and that we all have a responsibility to create a world where kids can thrive.
Exactly, whether we're parents or educators or policymakers or just concerned citizens,
Yeah.
we can all make choices that help build a brighter future for kids.
I think we've all learned a lot today.
Me too.
But even more importantly, I hope this has sparked a sense of wonder about childhood.
That's what it's all about.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the enchanting world of childhood.
Yes, thank you.
Remember that the magic of childhood doesn't have to fade away.
Right.
Embrace your inner child, cherish those memories, and keep learning and growing.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, you were about to tell us about a childhood memory that had a big impact on you.
Yeah, so there's this one that really stands out. When I was about 8 years old, my family went to the Natural History Museum,
Uh-huh.
and I just remember being completely blown away by the dinosaur exhibit.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Those skeletons are pretty amazing.
They are, especially for an 8-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
What was it about the dinosaurs that really got to you?
Well, it was more than just how big they were,
Yeah.
although that was definitely part of it.
Yeah.
But standing there looking up at these giant fossils,
Yeah.
it just made me feel this sense of wonder and curiosity
About what?
about just how vast time really is.
And all the incredible forms of life that existed long before us.
So it sparked that desire to learn and explore,
Yeah, it did.
which is something that you've obviously carried with you throughout your life.
Absolutely. It really planted a seed,
Mhm.
that grew into this lifelong fascination with science and history.
Like, what kind of things did you do?
Oh, I remember reading tons of books about dinosaurs, paleontology, evolution.
Wow.
My parents even got me a fossil hunting kit.
No way.
Yeah, and I would spend hours in our backyard just digging around looking for fossils.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So a simple trip to the museum
Right?
turned into this huge passion
It did.
that still influences your work today.
It's true. And it's a good reminder that even these little everyday experiences
Yeah.
can have such a huge impact on how kids develop.
And it shows how important it is to encourage that natural curiosity
Absolutely.
and give them those chances to explore and discover new things.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about how the brain develops, the different ways that people raise kids around the world,
Right.
and how those early years can have a lasting impact.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
It really has.
Yeah.
So as we wrap things up,
Okay.
what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that childhood is so much more than just a phase.
Right.
These early experiences really shape who we become as people.
Yeah.
They affect everything,
Yeah.
from how we think and learn
Uh-huh.
to how we interact with others,
Mhm.
how we feel about ourselves,
Yeah.
and even how we view the world.
It's a reminder that those early years are incredibly important
They are.
and that we all have a role to play
Yeah.
in making sure that kids have what they need to grow and thrive.
Exactly.
Whether we're parents, educators, policymakers, or just members of the community, we can all make choices that help create a better future for children. I think we've all learned something today.
I have.
But more than that, I hope this conversation has sparked a sense of wonder about childhood
I hope so too.
and reminded us of how powerful those early experiences can be.
They're magical.
They really are.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the enchanting world of childhood.
Yes, thank you.
Remember to embrace your inner child, hold on to those precious memories, and never stop learning and growing.
That's the key.
It really is. And until next time, stay curious, everyone.